I'll never forget the sound of champagne hitting my face. Not the taste, not the cold, the sound. That sharp splash mixed with Eleanor Ashford's laughter as she called me trash in front of 200 people. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen, but I signed those divorce papers anyway. Lucas stood there with his arm around Diane, both of them smiling like they'd just won the lottery. And me? I was the joke, the punchline. The orphan girl who actually thought she could be part of their world. But here's what none of them knew. Not Lucas, not his cruel mother, not his arrogant father or his spoiled sister. 3 hours before that Christmas party, I'd gotten a phone call that changed everything. A call that would turn their empire into ashes and make them beg for mercy they'd never shown me. If you believe karma is real and love watching bullies get exactly what they deserve, you need to hear this story. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because what happened next, trust me, you won't see it coming. Drop a comment if you've ever been underestimated, because Magnolia's revenge. It was biblical. Now let me take you back to that night. The night my nightmare became their worst fear. The Ashford mansion looked like something out of a fairy tale that night. Snow was falling in thick, perfect flakes, covering the manicured gardens in white. The Christmas tree in the main hall had to be at least 20 feet tall, covered in gold ornaments and white lights. Guests arrived in fur coats and expensive wool suits, their breath visible in the cold December air as valets took their keys. I stood at the service entrance in my cheap cream-colored sweater and old brown coat, the only winter clothes I owned, watching all of it like I was looking through a window at someone else's life. I'd been married to Lucas Ashford for 4 years. 4 years of working 3 jobs while he built his business. 4 years of his mother Eleanor treating me like a servant. 4 years of his father Gregory looking at me like I was dirt on his expensive shoes. 4 years of his sister Vanessa posting photos on social media with captions about how some people don't know their place. I was an orphan. I grew up in a state facility with 17 other kids, sleeping on a cot that smelled like bleach and mothballs. I never knew my parents. Never had a birthday party. Never owned anything that wasn't donated or secondhand. When Lucas noticed me at the coffee shop where I worked, I thought it was a miracle. He was handsome, charming, from a wealthy family. He said he loved me. He said none of that other stuff mattered. I was so stupid. Eleanor answered the door herself that night, wearing a burgundy velvet dress that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Her diamond necklace caught the light from the chandelier, and she looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on your carpet. "You're late," she said. "The guests need drinks. Get inside and make yourself useful." Not hello, not Merry Christmas, just orders. I swallowed my pride, I'd gotten good at that, and walked into the house that had never felt like home. The party was already in full swing. Men in charcoal and gray suits talked about stock portfolios and golf courses. Women in silk dresses and fur shawls laughed about their winter vacations in Aspen and Paris. And there was me, weaving through them with a tray of champagne glasses, invisible except when someone needed a refill. I saw Lucas across the room, and my heart did this pathetic little jump it always did. He was wearing a dark suit that fit him perfectly, his hair styled just right. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman next to him, beautiful, tall, wearing a champagne-colored gown that hugged her like water. Her hand was on his arm. Her name was Diane. I'd heard Vanessa mention her before, always in that sing-song voice she used when she was being deliberately cruel. "That's Diane Richardson," Vanessa had told me once. "Her father owns Richardson and Associates. You know, the biggest law firm in the state? She's perfect for Lucas, actually went to college, has a family. Not like some people." I'd pretended not to hear. I pretended a lot. The night got worse fast. Gregory cornered me near the kitchen, his breath smelling like cigars and whiskey. "You know what you are, Magnolia. You're a charity case. We let Lucas marry you because he felt sorry for you, but charity has limits." My hands tightened around the tray. "I've worked hard. I helped build—" "You helped nothing," he cut me off. "You're a waitress, a cleaner. You think scrubbing toilets and serving coffee makes you worthy of this family? You're an embarrassment." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the tray at him. Instead, I said nothing. I just walked away, blinking back tears because that's what I always did. I survived. I endured. I told myself it would get better. Then Lucas called for everyone's attention. The room went quiet. He was standing on the raised platform near the Christmas tree, Diane right beside him. My stomach dropped. I knew. Before he even opened his mouth, I knew. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Lucas said, his voice carrying across the room. "I have an important announcement to make." He looked directly at me. 4 years ago, I made a mistake. I married someone I thought I loved, but I've realized that mistake has held me back long enough. People were staring at me now, all of them. Some looked uncomfortable, most looked entertained. Lucas pulled out papers from his jacket pocket. "Magnolia, these are divorce papers. I'm correcting my mistake tonight in front of everyone who matters, so there's no confusion about where we stand." The room started spinning. Eleanor stepped forward with this triumphant smile on her face. She'd planned this. They all had. "Sign them," Gregory said loudly. "You came from nothing. You'll leave with nothing. That's what the prenup says." I walked toward Lucas on shaking legs. My face was burning. People were recording on their phones. Vanessa was literally live streaming this, laughing with her friends in the corner. "Did you really think you belonged here?" Diane whispered as I got close. "Look at you. Look at your clothes, your background. You're nobody." Lucas handed me a pen. The papers were already open to the signature page. I tried to read them, but the words were blurry through my tears. Prenuptial agreement. 0 assets. 0 compensation. That's when Eleanor threw her champagne in my face. The liquid was cold and sticky, soaking into my sweater. The glass shattered on the marble floor. The room gasped, then went silent. "That's for wasting 4 years of my son's life, you filthy beggar," Eleanor said. I signed. My hand was shaking so hard the signature didn't even look like mine, but I signed. What else could I do? I had nothing. I was nothing. At least that's what they'd convinced me to believe. Lucas handed me $500 bills. "For the bus. Consider it charity." Security guards grabbed my arms, actual security guards like I was a criminal, and dragged me toward the door. People were laughing, taking pictures. Vanessa shouted, "Buy trash! Don't come back!" They threw me out the front gates into the snow. My wedding ring slipped off my frozen finger and disappeared into the white. I didn't bother looking for it. I sat at a 24-hour diner 3 miles away, my phone at 2% battery, my sweater still damp with champagne. I had $247 in my bank account and nowhere to sleep. I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. The waitress kept looking at me with pity, and that somehow made it worse. That's when my phone rang, restricted number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Miss Wellington?" A woman's voice, professional, urgent. "Wrong number," I said. "My name's Magnolia Ross." "Your birth name is Magnolia Grace Wellington," the woman said. "I'm calling from Wellington Global Industries. It's about your father." I hung up. It had to be a scam. I'd gotten those before, people trying to trick desperate people like me. The phone rang again, and again. "Please listen," the woman said when I finally answered. "My name is Patricia Chen. I'm an attorney. I'm sitting outside the diner right now with a man named Harold, our private investigator. We've been searching for you for 24 years. If you give us 5 minutes, we can prove everything." I looked out the window. There was a black car in the parking lot. 2 people got out, an elderly man in a tan overcoat and a sharp-looking woman in a gray pea coat. They walked into the diner and sat down across from me like this was completely normal. Harold slid a folder across the table. "Open it." Inside were photographs, DNA test results, legal documents, birth certificates, and a picture of a woman who looked exactly like me, same eyes, same face, holding a newborn baby. "That's Catherine Wellington," Patricia said quietly. "Your mother. She died the night you were born." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Harold leaned forward. "Your father is Jonathan Wellington. He owns Wellington Global Industries, hotels, real estate, technology. It's a $6.2 billion empire. You were stolen from the hospital the night your mother died by a nurse named Ruth Coleman. She raised you in poverty, never told you the truth. When she died, she left a confession letter. It took us 8 years to track you down." "This is insane," I whispered. "Your father is dying," Patricia said. "Pancreatic cancer. He has maybe 6 months left. His dying wish is to meet his daughter, to give you everything that should have been yours from the beginning." I started laughing, not because it was funny, but because it was too much, too impossible. A few hours ago, I was being thrown out of a mansion like garbage, and now these people were telling me I was a billionaire's daughter? "Prove it," I said. Patricia pulled out her phone and called someone. An hour later, I was in a private car, driving to an estate that made the Ashford mansion look like a garden shed. And there, in a wheelchair with an oxygen tank, was a man who had my eyes. Jonathan Wellington looked at me, and tears started rolling down his face. "Magnolia," he whispered. "My God, you look just like her." I broke down completely. This stranger, my father, held my hands and cried with me. He told me about my mother, how they'd met in college, how brilliant she was, how excited they'd been about having a baby, how she'd died from complications, and how he'd woken up to find his daughter gone, how he'd never stopped searching. "I failed to protect you once," he said. "I won't fail again." But then Patricia dropped another bomb. Jonathan's younger brother, Raymond, had been running the company. He thought Jonathan had no heir. Raymond was cruel, corrupt, and had been stealing from the company for years. If I revealed myself now, I could be in danger. "We need evidence against him first," Patricia said. "You need to stay hidden, learn the business, and then, when we're ready, we take back what's yours." I agreed, but I had one condition. "I want to destroy the Ashfords first," I said. Over the next 2 months, I transformed. Private tutors taught me business, finance, law. I studied my father's company inside and out. I learned how to walk differently, talk differently, be someone else. And I hired investigators to dig into Lucas and his family. What they found was devastating. Lucas's business was failing. He was $2 million in debt. He'd married Diane not for love, but because her father's law firm could help him. Gregory's company was being investigated for fraud. Eleanor had a gambling addiction and had lost $800,000. Vanessa was being blackmailed over a scandal she'd tried to hide. But the worst part? Lucas had taken the $8,000 I'd saved, money from my 3 jobs, money I'd hidden for emergencies, and gambled it all away. Then he'd forged my signature on loan documents. I was legally responsible for $45,000 in debts he'd created in my name. He'd planned this. Married me, destroyed my credit, divorced me with the debt. I didn't get angry. I got focused. I created a new identity. Madeline Grant, a mysterious European investor. I had my hair styled differently, wore designer clothes, expensive glasses. I looked nothing like the girl they'd thrown out in the snow. Then I approached Gregory Ashford's company with a $10 million investment proposal. He didn't recognize me. None of them did. The board meeting was surreal. I sat across from Gregory, Eleanor, Lucas, and, here's the twist, Raymond Wellington, my uncle. Turned out he and Gregory were partners in a shady real estate scheme. "Miss Grant," Gregory said, practically drooling, "your offer is very generous." "I believe in investing in the right people," I said, looking directly at Lucas. He kept staring at me like something was familiar, but he couldn't place it. Eleanor insisted on a celebration dinner at the mansion, the same mansion where they'd humiliated me. I wore an elegant taupe cashmere dress and walked through those doors like I owned them. Lucas was there with Diane, who was now his wife. She was pregnant. But my investigators had already told me the truth. The baby wasn't Lucas's. She'd been pregnant before they even got married. The real father was her ex-boyfriend Eric, and she'd trapped Lucas for his money. During dinner, I asked about Lucas's previous marriage. "Oh, that!" Eleanor laughed. "He was married to some orphan trash. We got rid of her." Lucas actually smiled. "Biggest mistake of my life, marrying her, not divorcing her. I recorded every word. Raymond pulled me aside later. "Something about you feels off," he said. His eyes were cold. "My brother keeps sending spies to investigate me. If you're one of them, you should know. I've destroyed people for less." "I'm just an investor," I said calmly. But I knew my time was running out. Then Patricia called. Jonathan had collapsed. He was in the hospital, dying faster than expected. I rushed there, and he grabbed my hand with what little strength he had left. "Finish this," he whispered. "Take what's yours. Destroy them all." I made my decision right there. No more waiting. I called an emergency shareholders meeting at Wellington Global Industries. I invited everyone, the Ashfords, Raymond, the media, investors, board members. I told them Madeline Grant was announcing a major merger. The conference room was packed. Raymond sat in the front row, confident. The Ashfords were excited, thinking they were about to get rich. I walked in wearing a burgundy wool dress. I looked different again, more polished, more powerful. I stood at the podium and looked at every face in that room. "My name is not Madeline Grant," I said. I removed my glasses. Lucas's face went white. "My name is Magnolia Grace Wellington. I am the daughter of Jonathan Wellington and the sole heir to Wellington Global Industries." The room exploded. People were shouting. Cameras were flashing. I didn't stop. "I have evidence that Raymond Wellington embezzled $50 million from this company. Federal agents are outside ready to arrest him." I nodded, and agents walked in. Raymond tried to run. They tackled him to the ground. "I have evidence that Gregory Ashford engaged in fraud and illegal real estate schemes with Raymond Wellington." More agents. Gregory was handcuffed. Eleanor started screaming. Vanessa was crying. I turned to Lucas. "You threw $500 at me and called it charity. You said I came from nothing." I held up documents. "I now own the building your family's company operates in. You rent from me. Effective immediately. Your lease is terminated. You have 30 days to vacate." Lucas looked like he was going to be sick. "You stole my $8,000. You forged my signature and saddled me with $45,000 in debt." I smiled. "I've transferred those debts back to your name, legally. You now owe every penny." Then I faced Eleanor. "You threw champagne in my face and called me trash." Security stepped between us as she tried to lunge at me. "Wellington Industries is pulling every investment from Ashford Corporation. Your company will collapse within weeks." Eleanor fell to her knees, sobbing. Finally, I turned to Diane. "You're pregnant with another man's child. Lucas doesn't know, does he?" I projected text messages on the screen behind me, Diane and Eric planning the whole scheme. Lucas stood there, completely broken. I walked out of that room with my head high. Behind me, I could hear them screaming, crying, destroying each other. My father died 3 days later. I was holding his hand. His last words were, "Your mother would be so proud." 6 months later, I stood in the office that was now mine. Wellington Global Industries was thriving. I'd cleaned house, made it ethical and transparent. I'd opened scholarships for orphans, built affordable housing, used my fortune to actually help people. The Ashfords? Gregory was in prison. Eleanor was bankrupt, living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Lucas was working at a gas station, drowning in debt. Vanessa had disappeared, too ashamed to show her face. Diane's baby was born, and Eric had abandoned her too. Raymond was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. I visited my parents' graves that winter. Snow was falling, just like it had been that night at the Christmas party. I placed flowers on both headstones. "I was never the trash they said I was," I whispered. "I was always your daughter." I walked away from that cemetery knowing the truth. They didn't break me. They freed me. Every insult, every humiliation, every moment of cruelty, it all led me here, to the life I was supposed to have, to the power I was meant to hold. I am Magnolia Grace Wellington, and this is just the beginning. And that's how I went from signing divorce papers in tears to owning everything they thought they'd taken from me. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on all notifications because I have more powerful revenge stories coming your way that will restore your faith in karma. Comment below, did I go too far or was this perfect justice? I read every single comment and I want to know what you think. Share this with someone who needs to remember that underestimating people can be the biggest mistake of your life. Thanks for watching, and remember, your darkest hour might be right before your greatest victory. See you in the next one.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment, every detail in the story has brought you emotions, thoughts, and maybe a little joy or motivation. Thank you for spending time with us, and hope that the next stories will continue to accompany you and touch your heart.